Be very careful that your customer data doesn't incorrectly point you in the wrong direction when it comes to prospect marketing. So to me, those who have never purchased from me will have different language and different levels of understanding versus the language of customers. So yes, I love a great customer testimonial treasure trove. But oftentimes customer testimonials will also include language that was adopted after the purchase wall.
Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Veronica Romney. If you don't know who Veronica is, she's the author of Identity Marketing, How to Create Loyal, Lifelong Fans and a Legendary Brand, no matter what you sell or the size of your budget. She conducts workshops for marketing teams, helping them leverage the psychology of identity to build lifelong customers. She's also host of the Rainmaker podcast. Veronica, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited you're here. Today, Veronica and I will explore a powerful technique to build really loyal customers.
Yeah.
Before we go there, I would love to hear your story. How'd you get into marketing?
A beautiful accident, the lack of internship opportunities. I actually was a declared finance major in business school. Loved math. Shout out to my math nerds. Loved AP calculus. But I couldn't secure a finance internship to save my life. The only thing that was available at the time was a marketing internship. And I'm like, well, close enough. So I jumped in and like very quickly realized like, oh, wow, like this is really fun. And it's not as, superficial or shallow or whatever the connotation or the perception that I had at the time. And then 2 months into my marketing internship, they found a spot for me in the finance department, which I was ecstatic about. Got in there within 48 hours, like, this is terrible. I'm in a cube. I can't do anything fun. I want to go back to marketing. So it was because of the lack of options that actually like made me change my major. And now I've been a marketer for almost 20 years.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the journey.
I've been a witness to marketing in all of its colors. Like I started off in corporate working at Ancestry.com. Then I worked at 2 agencies back to back where I got to be, that was probably like, I couldn't recommend agency life more for young professionals because for me, I had to become a little expert in like 150 clients in my portfolio. Do you know what I mean? So I got such a like exposure to so many different business models and business categories and different verticals and how marketing worked for each of them in its different ways. Then I worked at another software company before doing my own thing. And since kind of being on my own as an entrepreneur, I'm no stranger to the stage. I have my own courses and programs. And now recently, as of, earlier this year, I can now say I'm a book author of my first marketing book, which is wild.
So when did you go off on your own and kind of talk to us a little bit about that journey leading up to the book?
Yeah, it was, it was like Sophie's Choice. It was really hard because I had a very great corporate experience. I've never been an anti-corporate person. I was very much loved and I loved them. But that calling of the wild strikes whenever it wants. And I also was a recent mother. And so I think it was a combination of like my life was changing and I wanted more freedom and flexibility to be the mom that I desired to be, but I'm still this wildly ambitious human being. And so and my parents are Cuban immigrants. So let's just put that out there. Like I grew up front row to 2 entrepreneurs building something literally from nothing with everything stacked against them. So I think it was always in my bloodstream, but it wasn't until a combination of like having my first child, still having this ambition, watching my parents do it, that we basically started a marketing agency of our own and started becoming service providers and building our own portfolio of clients.
How long ago was that?
2017, October 2017 is when I started doing all that. When I left corporate, like goodbye. Mm-hmm.
So why write the book?
Well, it's always been on the bucket list, but this is a little bit personal. My little sister actually got diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer in October 2023.
Wow.
And so 2024 was a very difficult year. She is cancer-free today, so nobody worry. But it was a very difficult year as a family to navigate this for somebody so young with something so aggressive. And so I got to witness her really wrestle with her identity, now having to like identify as a breast cancer, patient, victim, however, different labels for different people. What I didn't realize was also going to simultaneously happen was that my own identity was going to be questioned because I've always identified as a fit person or a healthy individual. But like the root and the source of that identity was changing. And I didn't know that that was necessarily happening. But instead of trying to be fit or becoming this person to look a particular way, which is more vanity centric, now I could care less about vanity. And now I just desire to live to 100, never have cancer, never put my family through that. So a lot of my own identity was morphing. And so I remember writing identity on my bathroom mirror. I'm one of those people that have like markers. So I wrote the word identity on my mirror. And then it was being reflected in some of my work with my programs, helping marketers become rainmakers.
Mhm.
And so then I added the word marketing next to it after a couple weeks. And literally a couple weeks later, I was already working on the first draft of the manuscript that is identity marketing, which is weird. Yeah.
When did that drop, the book?
It came out this year, January 2025.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your journey. It sounds like you have a fascinating bunch of stories in there we could explore. The question that I want to ask is, why should marketers focus on buyer aspirations? Said another way, if we follow what you're about to share with us today to the letter, what could it make possible? What's the upside?
Well, I mean, honestly, think about my own story for a second, right? Like on the surface, right? I'm still the same buyer persona. I'm still this woman in her 30s who identifies as a fit person. I still have inclinations, or I have my purchases that like reaffirm that identity. Like on the surface, I'm the same. And you would target me as a marketing department the same. However, like I told you with my sister's story, the source, the power, the why behind who I am was changing very significantly. And so I mean, I'm not sharing anything that people don't already know. The economy is kind of crazy. We've been through a little bit of a cluster in the last recent couple of years. And so as a marketing speaker, I go to all these conferences and everyone's talking about rebranding and making themselves more appealable to this more price sensitive buyer, et cetera. But the person that no one's talking about that bothers me deeply isn't so much that the brand needs to go through a rebrand, but it's actually the consumer who's gone through their most significant rebrand of their personal lives. And I just find that when you actually connect a brand to a consumer's identity, how they identify their self-label, their self-concept, you're no longer in the business of a transaction. Now you're building a lifelong relationship with somebody that goes way beyond just the sale.
And what happens when that's done well?
Well, this is where like the stories of like, the Harley Davidsons of the world. I mean, and I also want to make sure I make a point of this because I know that your listeners are super smart. And so when often I say the word identity with really smart humans, they will instantly think brand identity, which is so radically important, right? Like we are in control of the identity of the brand. We get to determine its look, its feel. Like that's one of the gifts of being a marketer and a brand marketer specifically, right? But remember, brand identity is in my control as a brand. I get to dictate how I show up in the world, how I differentiate, how I dress our services, our products, our offers. When I talk about identity marketing, it's not the brand's identity, it's the identity of the customer, the consumer. And so the story that I like to share to like really accentuate this point is that of Harley Davidson, because so many years ago, there was an individual who was literally being buried in a custom-made plexiglass coffin so that everybody outside could see him sitting taxidermy style on top of his beloved 1967 Harley Davidson because he wanted the world to witness him riding into heaven. So not only was he buried a Harley Davidson buyer, but more importantly, he was buried a Harley Davidson hog. His identity was a hog, and he wanted to be remembered for like time and eternity as a hog. And that's just a great example of a brand who understands both, not just their own brand identity, which is like so American, but also the identity of the people that they service and serve and sell to, and these hogs that will literally be buried in the grave as such.
Okay, so back to my question. Which is, if this is done well, what's the benefit to having this and let me reiterate what I heard you say so far. So far, what I heard you say is, hey, rather than focusing on the way that your business is personified to your customers, understand how to understand the evolving identity of your customer. And when you can grok that, I'm just looking for another word for the word understanding. When you can grasp that something positive can come from it, and what is the upside? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like what does this unlock
There's so many
in a very
upsides.
tangible way? Yeah.
Yeah, and for the underdog especially, like there's so many examples in the book where small businesses were able to disrupt wildly saturated, uber competitive markets just because of the power and the psychology of identity of their consumers. I think more than anything, it also has the potential to like redefine the relationship that you have with your buyers. Like I think that the more that I get into marketing and the more hacks and tricks and strategies and things that are often taught from stage or in courses and curriculums, like it's all for the sake of generating more transactions. But for me, I find that what people desire most or what will change them the most is really a relationship that speaks to who they are and who they wish to become. And I just find that the brands that can connect that narrative, who the brand's values with their consumer's identity and their aspirational pursuit of an identity, are the ones that actually can build lifelong customers, no matter what you're doing and in spite of the numerous resources that others might have in front of you.
Okay, I think I understand it. What I'm hearing you say is that this concept, identity marketing, is really figuring out some sort of identity that is the through line with your best customers and adjusting your marketing to truly be magnetic, right? To attract that person that aspires to have something that somehow your brand, your business stands for. And when that happens, you don't have to struggle with the traditional things that marketers have to struggle with, because word of mouth becomes natural, and people evangelize for you and they keep coming back. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
All of the above, literally all of the above. I just find so many of us in marketing departments having to rely on the cheapest form of traffic, the most expensive form of traffic, when marketing messaging no longer resonate, when it doesn't connect. And it's just like this angry monster that is never fed. It's never enough. Versus leveraging those that can speak on your behalf in every corner of the room that you're not a part of. Like that's the force that is identity marketing resonating with somebody like that.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start unpacking
Okay.
how we actually do this, right? Like, where do we begin?
Yeah.
What's first step?
So fun in the book. When I wrote the book, that's a beautiful thing of having a book as opposed to a course or any other container. Like when you have 35,000 words, you can really unpack the how to, which is really fun. So for us, what we did in the book is outline at least 4 steps. I call it the identity code, but it's basically a 4-step framework process that helps you find your marketable identity, leverage it in your marketing messaging, and then obviously have all that generous benefit that we just disclosed. So the very first step of the identity code is you're going to find it. Oftentimes, the word identity and finding someone's identity, it's not a cutesy name. It's not like finding your Swifties or finding your hogs. It's something much more profound. Sometimes it's actually finding the real thing, the real person or group of people that someone's buying for. And so when I say find it, like, yes, you're going to like audit yourself in the ecosystem that is the internet. But most of the time when brands are auditing themselves online, they're doing it from like an egocentric point of view. Like, what do prospects or customers think about us? What are they saying about us? What are they highlighting? What are they telling their friends about us? Like, it's very us, 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 us. What I have my workshop participants do is that they're going to do a secret shopper analysis of the internet in regards to their brand, but not how they have done it in the past. They're looking for language not about sentiment towards my brand. They're looking around language about sentiment towards the user themselves. So what are they saying about themselves? Do they think they're a good mom, bad mom? Like, what are they saying as far as who they are, who they wish to become, what they're struggling with? Like, you're just looking for a voice of customer in regards to their self-concept, their self-label, who they desire to become. That is the pursuit of this identity lens secret shopper exercise that we have companies go through. And like, I have some really fun stories where people thought that they were selling to X, and then through this exercise, they realized they were really selling for Y.
So, okay, let's kind of give an example to help people wrap their head around this.
Okay, so there is one of my favorite examples is a company called talkbox.mom. Literally the domain, Mike, is .mom. They literally put the buyer in the domain name. So talkbox.mom. It's a small company that is self-funded that teaches families how to speak foreign languages. So they recently had their whole team come to one of my workshops, and we spent like 30 minutes where they kind of divided and conquered the internet. One person did Reddit, the other person did Facebook groups, the other one was like in the comments, the YouTube, and all the things. And independently, they came back and like shared all of the user sentiment words. And what kept them coming up as far as language was like fluency, fluent, family, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we had discovered through this exercise that was, yes, in spite of the fact that mom is 95% of the time making the purchasing decision, it's not because mom is buying Spanish to learn Spanish to, run off to Mexico with her Spanish lover. Mom is buying Spanish for her family to be fluent in Spanish. She's not buying for her aspirational development. She's actually buying for the family's aspirational upleveling so that they can draw closer to each other. They can experience the outside world with more unity and connection. Like she's really doing it for her family. So what came out of the exercise with this concept, instead of just targeting talkbox.mom users, it was actually speaking to fluency families and families that wish to become fluent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how in the world did you get to the bottom of that? Let's give some tips for some people to at least be able to do some of this on their own, because what I'm hearing you say, first of all, is this example of talkbox.mom, and yes, .mom is actual domain URL, folks. I checked. What you discovered through a series of some sort of process was that the mom is the buyer, and the mom isn't buying for her. She's buying for her kids and maybe her husband. And she's trying to get them to understand another language because she wants them to experience the world in a bigger way, something along those lines, right? Yes. How in the world does someone get to the bottom of that? Like, what are some tips on how we could discern that?
Yeah. Well, again, the hardest paradigm shift that my own clients will go through is like they're so accustomed to do the identity, like the auditing of their brand from that brand perspective, from the ego of like, what are they saying about us? If just that paradigm shift, that when you're looking on the internet and all these little corners, your own Instagram comments, your YouTube comments, your Facebook group, your customer survey responses, your inbox, like just going through these channels and making sure that you block out what they say about you, and you're only hyper focusing on what they're saying about themselves. Good, bad, neutral, I don't care. You're just extracting sentiment language around them and how they perceive themselves and what they want or what they struggle with. It's just about them. If anybody listens to this podcast and just does that exercise tonight, I think you'd be surprised what you're finding.
Interesting. Okay. So is it possible that we could, believe it or not, take all this and throw it into an AI model and ask it to like help us? Like, what, you got any tips on how to do that?
Yeah, I actually love AI. I'm a very pro AI. And when you go through the workshop, we actually give you all of our AI prompts that we've used. So yes, can you do that? Can you use AI to analyze external resources? For sure. However, be careful with AI because AIs will summarize or rephrase user sentiment and user language. I don't want you to do that. Be really, really careful. I want you to see their own language in its raw form, because that's oftentimes where you find the identity in plain sight. But if you have it summarized and put in a summary, it just won't work as well. So just be careful with that.
Okay. So I think that the magic to all this is to have really good data at the front of 100%. What we're talking about. So folks, if you don't have, but what's really good about what Veronica said is you can go and look in comments, right? My guess is you can look in comments on other people's YouTube videos also, right? You can look in comments on other people's posts. I mean, is it possible that you could, especially if you're new, right? If you don't even have these customers yet, you could go seek these out? Or is that really much better for people that are already your existing customers? What's your thoughts on that?
Most of the time, identity work is done for you. In the absence of you providing an identity, your people, if you've been in business for a minute, will do the work on your behalf. Hogs was not created by Harley Davidson. That was self-appointed by a group that would actually tie hogs to the back of their bike when they would win tournaments.
Oh, literally? Okay. Wow.
Really.
Okay.
And then like 10, 20 years later, Harley Davidson, the brand was like, oh, we should take this and have this mean something. So now it means the Harley Owners Group, but it was just hogs. And Swifties, Taylor Swift never called them Swifties first. It was they called themselves Swifties. And then she acknowledged it in an interview like years later. So oftentimes, if you're already in business and in practice, the identity work is done for you. You just have to literally find it. In the absence of that, because you are a brand new business, you're going through a major rebrand or pivot, your buyer is going to be completely different, or you have like literally nothing to work off of, to then Mike's point, then we would advise you to look at other providers who are targeting the same buyer, because they're not doing identity marketing work. So you can probably be secure in that.
Okay, cool. So there's some people that are listening right now that are really savvy marketers, and
Yes.
that maybe they have hundreds or thousands of testimonials that they've already
Yes.
collected into a spreadsheet or a database, and they probably just need to look at it through a different lens,
Yeah.
right? And that is many of us. So, but there's a chance that we might accidentally misinterpret some of this data, right? So this is where your next step comes in, right? So why don't you talk to me about, like, once we've actually found what we believe is it,
Yeah,
right?
prove it.
How do we do something with it? How do we know it's the right thing?
Yeah, and I also want to just make a quick Surgeon General warning. Like, and I mentioned it in the book, be very, very, very careful. And this goes for the savviest of marketers. We're probably the most guilty of this. Be very careful that your customer data doesn't incorrectly point you in the wrong direction when it comes to prospect marketing. So to me, those who have never purchased from me will have different language and different levels of understanding versus the language of customer. So yes, I love a great customer testimonial treasure trove. But oftentimes customer testimonials will also include language that was adopted after the purchase wall. So just be really careful. I really actually care most about prospect language, which is why I like Instagram comments and things like that, because they haven't necessarily bought from you yet.
Okay. Well, that's important. So let's just put a big pin in that, folks.
Yeah.
If you have a newsletter with non-customers on there, I would imagine that could be a really great source, because they've been just like being nurtured in your newsletter.
Correct.
If you have a lot of people on the social channels, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, these are all great places for you to mine for this information, right? And look for that. And don't, because the dangerous thing is that, like, the language that they adopt could be influenced by you once they become a customer, is what you're saying. And you want to make sure you use their natural language before they ever become a customer. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Nailed it. I couldn't have explained it better than that. That was perfect. Yep.
Okay. So what's the next part of your process?
Okay, so let's say in our identity secret shopper experience, we find something juicy. We find fluency families, we find talk tribe, we find bilingual bunch. I mean, there's so many different directions that maybe Talkbox.mom could have taken, because all of those were very popular. But we have to validate. We have to prove it. Like, there are very big brands who spend a ton of money trying to force feed an identity to its buyer base. And the buyer was like, no, thanks. Like, my favorite is like the Pepsi generation. Like, I'm not your generation. No, thanks. Like, a hard pass. So even big brands do this incorrectly. So like, we want to go through a step, I call it prove it, but we want to go through an adoption or early signals of adoption step where we're at least getting validation. So same thing with Talkbox.mom, like when they actually like went out and surveyed their people and kind of put, an Instagram poll or things like that, like they got pretty harsh feedback around the talk tribe concept because it was cultural appropriation. They didn't love the word tribe. So that's an example. But one of my favorite examples in the book of the prove it is actually a woman named Nicole Wingard, who's affectionately known on the internet streets as Nicole the Intern. She was literally a $15 an hour intern working at a mocktail beverage business with no funding and from Texas, and literally created an Instagram account from nothing called The Best Marketing Strategy Ever. And in less than 60 days, amassed 500,000 followers by empowering #SmashArmy. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. She literally like would go in her backyard with expired product smash it with a baseball bat, film it with like zero production value, put it on the internet, had this whole narrative of like, I have 60 days to prove to my boss that this is a better marketing strategy than his. And like within the first like 10, 15 days, the people got behind this like fight narrative, and they wanted to help Nicole, and they wanted to help her in her fight against, this, boss type of figure. Actually, Mike's very, very kind, but they're both on the podcast, really lovely people. But there was one time where she was trying these like funny Halloween costumes, and she found an old military hat. She puts it on camera, and she treats the can, no longer smashing it with a baseball bat, but she treats the can like a grenade, like throws it over the fence, it explodes. And again, this is why marketing, like I have a diploma.
When you say the can, what are you talking about? Like I'm trying to visualize what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah, so like pretend that the can is a grenade. So she pops the top open, and
like a can of soda, or what are we talking about?
Yes,
okay.
Like a mocktail beverage, right?
Oh,
so it's a can.
Got it. Okay, okay.
She throws it over the fence, and then it like explodes, like it's like this army grenade or whatever. And the reason I love this story so much beyond its crazy success is the fact that, like, again, she's a $15 an hour intern, no marketing budget, expired product. And yet, because of her putting herself out there and looking for early signals of adoption and feedback and like being on board with this concept, she started reading the comments and the Instagram comments that people were in the fight with her. And so on day 15, she offers up proactively on her own, #SmashArmy. It's adopted immediately. Everyone's like, #SmashArmy. The Smash Army is born. It was so successful of a campaign that they literally renamed the entire company from Mixology to Smashed, just because of this.
So just so I understand, because I don't think I'm completely tracking here, what exactly did she do? She had a bunch of expired drinks, and she figured, I'm going to smash them with different things just to see if I can get attention. Is that really what you're saying? So she'd smash it with everything you could imagine, like a baseball bat versus like a, I don't know, like anything, a lawnmower.
Pinata. Yep.
Okay. So, and what was she trying to, what was the hypothesis that she was trying to prove here? I guess that's the part I'm trying to grab.
Yeah, this is an underdog brand. There's no venture funding. No one's poured any money into this company. The beverage space is super saturated, wildly competitive, tons of money being funded into these organizations. They're the underdog of underdog stories. They don't have any type of like formal marketing budget, and yet they have a whole bunch of like expired cans, about to expired cans. And so her and her boss, Mike, basically were like, how can we evangelize or get people on board? How can we make the product kind of and part of the narrative, not necessarily because no one's going to push like a product down anybody's throat. So they came up with this idea, and the reason I bring this up is they use social media very much like how comedians will work out their jokes in dirty clubs before we ever see the very polished Netflix special. They didn't even use the brand's Instagram account. They created a brand new Instagram account from zero called The Best Marketing Strategy Ever. 0 followers day one. And in 60 days grew it to 500,000 followers because they brought people into an invitation to become the Smash Army and fight with Nicole to like win this bet that she could like outperform her boss's marketing strategies in 60 days.
Okay, so back to the prove it thing. Let's say we've got a concept, an idea that we want to prove. What I heard you saying is like do a survey. But what other things can we do, obviously, if we're not going to do something crazy like what Nicole did?
Well, yeah. So what I teach are, literally on day one of the workshop, we have our attendees like start validating some of this, because between customer survey templates, you have social media where a story lasts 24 hours, a post can be posted and then archived within seconds if you want to. We have at our disposal in very affordable ways channels that we can offer up or solicit feedback and find early signals of adoption that are free for us to use. And that's exactly what Nicole did in this effort using Instagram specifically. But we have surveys, we have other social media channels. There's many other ways that you can basically involve somebody to giving you validation. What
are we looking for when we're trying to validate here?
There's different ways to do it. You can flat out ask them like, hey, what do you think about Fluency Family? This, or this. You can I've seen some of our participants just be that direct. I've had other participants put some of the identity, naming on like swag mock-ups and then asking people if they would prefer to wear this shirt or this shirt or this shirt with different, right? So like there's different ways in which we're doing it, but you're basically having somebody endorse the fact that they would wear or proudly identify in this manner. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine you could also create social posts that are themed around these things. And what you're really watching for is high engagement, rich comments, that kind of stuff. Is that really what we're looking for?
Yep. You're all of the above, especially in repeating the language is really, really important. We've even had validation found in cold advertising because they really didn't want their existing customers to validate this. So they actually did like 5 different, same exact ad creative, but the ad copy, the first line of the ad copy was like, "Hey, soul sister. Hey, did it like name identity name number 2, identity name number 3."
I like that.
And they actually used their cold ads and they stripped out, they excluded their existing customer, right? Custom audience. It was through the cold advertising play and just changing the identity, the identification of, "Hey, you," and then offering the name to see which ones was clicked on more. Yeah, we've seen it in all the different ways.
I would imagine you could split test a landing page or something like that too.
Of course.
With headlines and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what we know so far. We've talked about, first of all, you got to find it, and it is some unique aspiration or identity that your best customer audience, prospective future audience has.
Yep.
And then figure out a way to, for lack of better words, come up with a name or a phrase and then prove out that those words are actually connecting with your audience through the examples that we just talked about. Once you feel like you have actually gotten enough data, what do we do next?
Okay, so third step is name it, but that seems obvious. Like, Veronica, I already have the name. No. I loathe shallow marketing stuff. I loathe it deeply. Ugh. And so I'm not helping you find a cutesy community name. Stop it right now, right? What we're looking for is somebody who's willing to be buried in a name, like that level of devotion. So the third step, when I say name it, it just means give it deep, profound, contextual meaning to what it means to be this. And you have to provide that narrative, right? So it's no different than like I literally give birth in the hospital. I tell my family I've named this beautiful child Miles or James, and like usually the very next question is like, well, why'd you name him Miles? And why did you name him James? And why did I name the dog what I named the dog? Like, we desperately desire and seek out contextual understanding behind things that should hold significance. It's just a psychological fact of human behavior, right? So if somebody were to stumble upon the Fluency family, the Swifties, the Hogs, the Smash Army, what does that mean? And that's really for the brand to define, to give it deep meaning. And we go through this fun exercise, the Dojo Casa House of meaning, where it has like an origin story. It has its non-negotiables. It has a slogan, very much like how politicians will like literally get 51% of the country to vote for them over like a slogan. Like there's so many different parts to this, but essentially the concept is it has deep, profound meaning that we get to define so that somebody proudly knows what they stand for when they wear this.
Okay, so give us some tips on how to do the Dojo Casa House, which sounds a little Japanese meets Spanish or something there, right?
It's a little nod. Actually, it's a nod to Ken in the movie Barbie, where he takes over Barbie's house and he calls it the Dojo Casa House of patriarchy. It's like one of my favorite movies. Ryan Gosling.
So how in the world do we actually give us some tips on how to name this stuff? Because this sounds very crafty and some people need a little creative guidance here, Yeah.
And also, mind you, most of the people that we work with are not like these gifted copywriters. So obviously we're going to hand you a whole plethora of AI. You want to talk about AI? Wait, there's so many different prompts. There's so many different templates and things that, that are tools that will aid you in this. But essentially we really like to start with the origin story.
Okay.
Like, what is the birth story of this group? Why does it mean something? Why does it have place in the world? And why is it inviting others to join this, right? Like, this is very important. This is an inclusive marketing angle and marketing messaging. right? It's beyond the shallow. So we definitely start with the origin story, which sometimes can tie directly to the identity of the visionary or the founder of the organization, like very Walt Disney, where like the Disney magic lives on, right? Other times it's more the origin of the people that this company was started for. Everybody has a little bit of a different origin. Then we go through a process of just like, if you were to invite people to campaign for you, again, very similar to a political campaign, what slogan would you cry out in the streets to unite people in all walks of life? Because that's the other thing about identity. It's not demographic identity, it's soul identity. So it's not everybody who identifies as 32-year-old female who has an interest in Volvo. It's deeper than that. And so like we go through these different exercises, but those are, I think the origin story is probably one of my favorite prompts in that one.
As a former professional copywriter, I've been saying long live the M dash, and I'm having a lot of people resonate with that, because in the AI world, M dash is like looked down upon, because AI understands what humans have understood forever, that the M dash is this beautiful tool that gives us space in our writing. And you've got these people on the one side that are like, if it's M dash, it's AI, and I'm like, long live the M dash, long live the M dash, and it's almost become a little rallying call for the copywriting community that wants to like retain this thing. So, and
they should call themselves M dashers or whatever, right? Like,
I know, it's
honestly, right? Like if that means something to them and the purity of great copywriting, then that's its own meaning and contextual understanding.
Yeah. So, back to something you said about that I wanted to really dig in on. You said, start with the birth story of this group. Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a distinction that we need to clarify.
Okay.
We're creating what you called a group of people, a subclass, a community, not just a message. That's an important distinction, because through these threads that you've been talking about with Swifties, Hogs, Talkbox, and Smash Army, these are groups that have like some sort of a identity that transcends the business. Yeah. And I feel like that's the missing piece we probably need to dig on a little bit here. We're not just creating a brand identity, we're creating a group identity. And I feel like we should pause for a second and help people understand, because they're going to have to persuade their boss, how in the world, by identifying a group of people, is that going to help our brand? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally. And I appreciate you taking a pause, a beat.
Yeah.
Right. To just let that land. Yeah, it is important. It is really, really important. And I think too, it's like, I mean, look, when trying to do revolutionary things or innovative marketing techniques or strategies that like former organizations or employers or boardrooms have not yet, accustomed to seeing, you have to start with their understanding. And then I love the improv rule of yes and. Yes, we will do the classic, whatever has already worked. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is a terrible expression. But yes, and what would it be like if we took all of our best prospective customers, put them in a room, evangelize them, and then just like let them loose in the world? What magic could that create, right? And having the science and the data to back that up. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to keep going on that just a little bit longer, because what I think I heard you say is, go to your boss, for those of you that feel like this is going to be a hard sell, and explain to them that, hey, if we can label this group something that's never been labeled before, right? Like they've never heard that phrase before. Yeah. And it just so happens that our company, our customers that we're trying to attract are in that group. This is the unlock. Like, just connect those dots a little bit.
Yeah, I'll tell you one. I'll give you a technique that has worked really well for myself, but also for some of our other participants when trying to relay or try to convey value in an intangible concept. Because what we're talking about is intangible, right? And so like presenting something intangible and pitching that is really difficult oftentimes. But it's really not, if you think about how much companies are pouring into having their name on merch and swag. Like, please, right? Like, how many times have we poured money into having our logo on the Yeti or the Stanley or the candle or the pen or the so what if, in addition to having our name be on a billboard, on a notepad, on a mouse track, on a whatever, it was also across the chest of our most beloved customers or prospective customers. And they were wearing it on a hat, or honestly, in some cases, they literally get it tattooed on their skin. You know, you've made it in identity marketing when somebody's tattooing your logo or your, emblems on their skin. It's crazy. Like, what value would that additionally provide for us beyond just the cheap swag at a conference?
Okay, so we started with find it, then we went to
prove it,
which is the validating part, and then we went to name it, which we spent a lot of time on this. We went down a little rabbit trail, really just like, hey, this is really a group that we're identifying here, not necessarily
M-dashers.
The M-dashers. So what's next?
Last step, my favorite step, is the dress it. And you can tell that we're already going in that direction because we were just talking about it. But like, this is where, and Seth Godin says this too, like, people want to wear their religion. We want to showcase externally what we believe internally. It's just something that we do. And so this is where we get to basically turn an intangible into a tangible, regardless if you are literally in the physical products space or not. And one of my favorite stories of all time is a company called Red Ants Pants, which was started by a woman named Sarah Calhoun, who literally grew up in like hard labor, manual labor in the fields, the farms, right, the pastures. And 20 years ago, if you were a woman who prided herself on doing hard things, the clothing that would stand up to that task was actually men's clothing. Like, they didn't sell manual workwear for women 20 years ago. There wasn't a perceived marketplace for it. So this is like the story of every entrepreneur. No one's willing to solve a problem. I've identified a problem. I must solve problems, start a business. So she moves to Bozeman, Montana. Her first weekend in Bozeman, Montana, she's sitting in a local cafe, which is small. She's reading one of those like neon yellow books, like, Small Business for Dummies. Do you remember those books, the Small Business or Crocheting for Dummies, like really obnoxious yellow? And she's sitting there in the cafe. She's reading this book, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like junior entrepreneur. And an older gentleman walks up to her because it's a small town, kind of like strikes up a conversation, notices her book, says, "Hey, I see your book. What are you doing? Like, are you starting a business? You thinking about starting a business?" She's like, "Yeah, I think, there's need for workwear pants for women. Like, there's just nothing, we only can wear men's clothing to do what it is that we do." And this is where, like, whether you believe in like the invisible hand, God, the universe, lo and behold, this individual that she meets randomly in her first weekend in a brand new town that she moves into had just finished like 10 years plus working at a company called Patagonia.
Oh.
And not only has he worked at Patagonia, he's like the guy who knows all the peoples, all the connections, and he validates her. He tells her, like, "Sarah, not only do you have a good idea, you have a great idea, and you should move on this extremely quickly, and I want to help you." And so Red Ants Pants is born because in a red ant colony, the female red ant does all of the hard work, not the male ant. Now, she makes a very, I think, controversial decision. She decides that she doesn't want to be B2B. She doesn't want to take her pants to retailers and then retailers sell it to us. She knows she wants to take the pants directly to the women. But the problem is, where are these hardworking women located? In the middle of freaking nowhere. They're in fields and pastures and like ranches. So her and her sister and their border collie puppy rent an Airstreamer. And they take the pants on the road all through North America, going through like boom and bust town one at a time, sharing the good news of Red Ants Pants. The swell, the word of mouth that starts to occur, literally, you can follow their journey on the blog, The Antidote. She's inviting people to join the Ant Hill. It's a whole movement. She starts doing these challenges where they would sew red ants into pants in different locations in the pants. So like if my ant was on my left heel and your ant was also on your left heel, then we would be connected. So they would do like Red Ants Pants challenges.
But they weren't real red ants. You were talking about like the emblem.
Stitch, the little stitch, right?
Yeah.
And so in the first year, they also believed in like elevating the economics of these small towns in addition to just selling product. So they hosted a music festival, and the first year, 6,000 people showed up just because of word of mouth. They've had up to like 30,000, 40,000 attendees in recent years, and like famous country artists will come. My favorite story though in this success is that there was a woman who was going into surgery, and she was obviously frightened. And she requested from the OR team, if she could please wear her red ants pants into the surgical room when she went in because it reminded her of her strength. Like Sarah and her company, they're not asking you to order now. They're inviting you to join the colony. You can literally go to the website. You're joining the colony. It's more than just pants.
Fascinating. So do you have any tips on how in the world we can quote unquote dress it? Especially for those of us that don't sell pants.
Yeah. Well, this is where, again, this is going to be unique for every company and every person, right? So like in the case of Talkbox.mom, they're going to have, pieces of clothing or pieces of items that would be very, meaningful for a traveling family. Smash Army, it's going to be military. You can literally go to their website and buy military stuff because it's the Smash Army and it has that feeling. So I can't tell you what to do. It is directly tied to your people and what matters most to them. But this is where you literally get to dress them and give them the same power that, Harley Davidson has. When you think of Harley, you think of like black, shiny leather. America. Like it's that same impact where you're dressing the identity of a hog, you're dressing the identity of your people.
What I like about all these examples is they're tapping into something that people are familiar with.
Yeah.
Like in the idea of the Smash Army, the military theme, right? In the case of the red ants pants,
yes,
they're talking about ants, right? And they got, when you start thinking creatively about ants, like you mentioned, colonies and and workers and hard workers, and all these different things that are metaphors, carrying your weight and then some, all these things that go with that, that larger known theme, right? And but you don't have to do that, but it sounds like if you can tap into kind of a familiar, already existing concept, then you can take this and like ride it further, right?
Oh, 100. I mean, yeah, I think everybody on the planet knows a Swiftie before they tell you they're a Swiftie. Like you can tell, you see them. I remember when I was running my Rainmaker residency programs and I was helping marketers become master rainmakers. And so we would have so much fun with that. I remember like at one of our events, we had like a money gun and it would shoot out bills with all of the attendees' faces, and they would take pictures of their face on these fake bills and like put it means something. And I love what you said, like taking it to something they already have an understanding or an acceptance of, and then elevating it and tying it to their identity. Yeah.
Veronica Romney, if people want to connect with you on the socials, where do you want to send them? And if they want to consider working with you, where should they go?
I'm V Romney on all socials. So that's easy. And I will tell you that my two
letter V, letter
V.
Yep.
And then Romney, ROMNEY. Actually, my favorite social media channel right now is LinkedIn, but my second favorite is Instagram. So those are the two. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then if they want to work with you, where do you want to send them?
VeronicaRomney.com for all things book, all things, everything me. Yeah.
Awesome. Veronica, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.